What's up, everybody? It's Will here. Uh, just wanted to start off by saying hello. Thank you for watching my shows, watching the channel. I know this seems crazy right now, but hopefully, eventually, in the future, things will get a lot better. Of course, the camera will get a lot better, mic will get a lot better, computer will get a lot better. Hopefully, things progress little by little, and we'll take it inch by inch. But thank you for watching, and thank you for spending your time watching this instead of doing things that are probably or obviously more important. Elizabethton Christian Shelter. This is the place that they sent me after O&A. O&A course relayed to the judge the placement of where I'd be placed. I was placed at Elizabethton Christian Shelter. It is in Elizabethton, Tennessee. There's also another place in Elizabethton. It's a runaway shelter instead of the Christian home. And the runaway shelter was mainly for people that went to the Christian shelter, didn't do the program, kept running from the program, and when they'd run, the police would catch them at some point. Then they'd take them to the shelter, which was like maybe a 23-1, which is locked down 23 hours a day in your cell, and you get 1 hour out a day, either rec, showers, things like that. But in group homes, in juvenile facilities, especially runners, you usually get to go out to a little slab of concrete that might luckily have a basketball goal in it. You could play some basketball for maybe an hour with a couple of the other boys. But these facilities ain't used to house people. But anyways, that'll come into play because I've been to plenty of those as well, obviously. So when I went to Elizabethton Christian Shelter for the first time, I was nervous and not scared, but anxious. So when you go to them group homes, or if this has happened to you and you feel nervous and you're scared of a situation, just go through it and do it, and you become less afraid, less scared, and more at home in that surrounding and setting. I think honestly in a cage is better for me than anywhere, just because I've been in that cage for a long time. But obviously it's better to be out in the community and doing things the right way and stuff. But it's really hard to go from somebody telling you routines and things to do into going to telling yourself what to do, in a sense. But so when I went to Elizabethton Christian Shelter, that was the first time I had a case manager. And a case manager is a person that basically assesses an individual or a client or a kid, and they have a list of kids, and they work with them kids to help get them through the program, help them work with financial things, maybe even lawyer things. But caseworkers get you as a caseload, and it's up to them to make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing in the placement that you're in. And it's up to them to get you out of the placement so they can get you off their caseload and they can get somebody else on the caseload. And I had a lot of them. I had a lot of drivers. I had a lot of drivers that know who I am. And a lot of people back home that obviously know me. And we'll get into some stories or stuff. But anyway, so I get there and I meet my house parents, and house parents are the people that will be watching you while you're at the group home facility. They're in charge. They tell you, what you can and can't do, what times you got to lay down, when you got to go to your racks, when to go to eat. They're the ones who make sure food's provided, and they live there in the facility with you. Now, Elizabethton Christian Shelter is a pretty large facility. This was probably in just so you know, I'm 42, so it was back a long time ago, like maybe somewhere in the 90s, like 94, 95, somewhere in there, something. But when I met Chuck and Mary, they were good people. everything I'm about to say is going to sound a little weird, but a lot of things back home in the South, especially in Tennessee, everything is religious based, and a lot of people uh, back home believe everything that the people who's in control of that explains it to them, and they take it as gospel. So I don't really want to get into that stuff. I'm just saying that a lot of things, that's why it's called Elizabethton Christian Shelter, is it's based a lot, and a lot of these places will be based around Christianity, and knowing that when you go to these homes, even from a young age, that's the first thing, the Bible's the first thing you get. And I think they're putting the Bible and problems and trouble hand to hand, and they say, if you do these things in this will fix and change your life. So there's good and bad aspects to everything. Chuck and Mary were good people. I was there for 9 months at that group home. They were the best house parents I ever had. It's the only group home I went to and completed. I did stay there 9 months. I think I got to go home on one home visit, like maybe once. A lot went on there. So let's get into a little bit of it. So when you first go there, you get a $200 allotment, which is super awesome. They take you and your case manager and people apply, and they get funds so that the kids can go and take $200 and just buy clothes. So they get underwear and socks and a couple outfits and a couple pair of shoes. And, sometimes it's Walmart stuff, sometimes it's Target stuff, sometimes it's Kmart. Just it's at certain places that will accept the vouchers. So you get to do that, which was super awesome. And this time we got to ride a van with a whole bunch of boys that I had met there. Of course, kids my age, a boy named Jerry and another boy named Ramsey. And we were in a group home, but we were in a group home with 3 older boys that were all probably, 17, right at the cusp of 18 and getting out. And, I remember a lot of fun times. I remember a lot of hard work. We had to get up early. We had to scrub trash can bins with toothbrushes, and we had to dig sewer lines and crazy things like that. So we were always nonstop working and things. And main details are that when we used to ride in vans and we used to go out, we used to have 1 or 2 people stay back in the van and say they don't want to go in the stores, so that when the house parent would lead us in, because one would stay back home and one would go, so when one would lead us in the store, the boy or the person who would stay in the vehicle would go around the outside of, say, the mall or something, and they would walk around and pick up as many cigarette butts as they could get, because as soon as we'd get them back to the group home, we'd be able to, take them apart and get the tobacco out, and of course take a battery and put 2 pieces of wire together on it and light cigarettes from that. You can also make a rose. I'll talk about that later on. There's plenty of ways to light things. And, we wasn't allowed to smoke, but we always found ways to smoke. That was one of my main objectives at group homes, was how could I get away in order to find as much tobacco and stuff that I could get to bring back so that we had things. And me and Jerry and Ramsey, we used to always get in trouble because the house parents would come down, they'd smell the tobacco, and then, they'd take things away from us, take home visits away from us, take game room away from us. We did have a game room at that facility, and we had a pool table and the TV. We didn't have cable or anything like that, don't get it twisted. And there was no government channels back then, so we only got what the rabbit ears would pick up. So, but yeah, I do remember smoking and getting caught and getting in trouble and putting Chuck and Mary through a lot of hell. But, I believe that they really cared about me, and I did love them and do love them for how they treated me and us, and uh, the sacrifices they made to stay with kids that were troubled or in bad situations or doing bad things. Um, there was this one time I was there, and I remember we were playing hide and seek or something, and I was going in and out of this little garage, and I had walked into the garage, and when I had walked out, it was like there was spider web all over my head. And when I went into the group home and I went into the bathroom, I used the bathroom, and as soon as I had come up to the mirror, I had noticed that there was two big, um, God, I wish I could remember the name. I'll be more specific and research names of certain things like that later. It wasn't a spider that could hurt you or kill you or anything, but it was one of the spiders that has that big yellow back with black dots in it, or the one that has like the big red whole back and little bits of black dots in it. Not the black widow, but they're these kind of bigger spiders, but they were pretty quarter size, and yeah, they were both stuck on my head, just sitting there. And of course, I didn't want to smack them. I was afraid they were going to bite me, and I had no knowledge of understanding spiders or spider anatomy or what spiders could hurt you or how bad a spider bite would hurt or what a spider would do to you if it did bite you or what spiders eat or things like that. But of course, with technology comes information, and information comes knowledge, and knowledge comes truth, and with truth you can speak facts. So that really helps somebody like me who ain't educated, who is only self-educated, and only self-educated by making myself learn about things I'm interested in. So, uh, and of course, I am a jack of all trades. So when we talk about things like that, like fixing things or stuff like that, or soldering or welding or anything like that, it's dropping motors, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I know I could do it, but uh, the thing is with that comes the fact that you're master of nothing, and yeah, you can do a lot of different things, but that don't come into work with a set goal in mind where you're doing one specific thing. So maybe ADH people and stuff like that have issues. I don't know, but. So I was in the bathroom, and of course one of the other boys had walked in, and I had made him take a piece of cardboard and smack, the spiders off my head. Of course nowadays I wouldn't do that, but I did that then. So now I would have probably put him in a cup off of my head, or I would have put my hand there and let him crawl right off my hand. Now that I know what they can and can't do, I'm not afraid as I was before I anyways, that's a non-thought, so sorry. uh, so I got the spiders off my head and stuff like that, and after that, for some crazy reason, I ended up shaving off my head and my eyebrows, and I was like that for powder for a few days. Well, actually probably like a few weeks. I've did crazy stuff like that quite a bit. But I'll tell you another story about Elizabethton Christian Shelter. We used to go to this pool. I think it's named Mulligan's. And we'd go there swimming. They'd take us, Chuck and Mary, to swim in. We'd play hide and seek. And we had a big gym. Elizabethton Christian Shelter, like I said, was big. So we had a huge gymnasium where we could play basketball and play hide and seek in there, turn the lights out and try to find each other through the gym and, the places. So it was a huge place. Great people at first and at this first experience. Now, like I said, I went to this group home multiple times, so it had changed. It was not, it turns into co-ed. It was not co-ed when I was there at this time, when I was like 12 or 13. But I do remember playing hide and seek in there and having fun. I also remember traumatic things, kind of like I told you we was there with basically 17-year-olds. Me, Ramsey, and Jerry were young, 12, 13 years old, all three of us. And the older boys had got a hold of duster in a can, and they had come into the game room, and of course I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't condone doing drugs or trying drugs, or just because I talk about being a drug addict and a drug user, not now, but up until now, it ain't these stories ain't to condone drugs. These stories are to help you understand that sometimes people get into situations and it's hard to get out of them. It's hard to change a whole aspect of somebody's whole identity, and it's different things like that, and lessons that hopefully somebody will take a small hint of it and say, well, hey, maybe I shouldn't go shoplift and think impulsively. Maybe I should notice that I do things impulsively, so maybe I should think before I act, like think, respond, and then act, instead of act, respond and act real quick, and then when you think about things later, then you want to change them and you can't because you didn't think about your actions that you did. So these stories are to help people with issues like this, going through this, to understand that it's not just them. They didn't have to go through it. Other people went through it with them. And, maybe they can learn something and choose not to make that mistake. That is a possibility, hopefully. So we were in the game room. They were doing duster. And I remember this one boy, man, he had the can upside down and he's shaking it and he was just hammering that thing. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he was like standing up and he boarded up like this and just fell. Boom! And hit his head, like all across his stuff, right on the edge of the pool table. He's passed out on the floor. We think he's dead. We're trying to wake him up. And I remember that. And then when he got up, everybody was laughing and having a good time until one of the older boys decided that it'd be a good idea to burn crosses into our arms. Now, I mean, a camera shows a lot, so, I've got, I can't see it right here, but I know right there is where I was hitting the head with a baseball bat. Had a pogo stick through my throat, bike handlebars through my lip, a nail jumping on a bed through my lip, bleachers from high school, dog bite to the throat. I can keep going, but rather not. So I do have a cross burnt here, but it's a burnt cross because that's what they decided to do. I was a smart individual. I rather make their idea to make it seem as if I'm into it, and I was kind of used to those things by then already. At 12 to 13, I had already burnt my arm, before, and felt fire. But maybe that was the start of the branding before I branded other things myself. But the start of the branding and the skin smell was, then. So they had, heated this metal coat hanger up, and boy, it was red. When I say red, I mean red, like you would look down into a furnace. And, I knew they would have held us down to do it no matter what. It was going to happen. And it's better to not give people power over you. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, respect people and treat people with dignity, of course, but don't give people the power over you in situations like that. Instead of them holding you down, doing something to you that's already going to happen to you no matter what, just go along, I guess, with it. I mean, it made it better for me. I feel bad about it after the situation and after I explain this to you, but at that moment, I felt more in control than I felt they were in control. So, I let them burn the cross in me, and, of course, Jerry followed suit with me, like, yeah, man, I'm hard, I can take it, So Ramsey was a little bit different than us. I mean, he was a ginger, no offense, but he was like not more. I don't even want to say that. It don't have nothing to do with none of that stuff. Even if he is a ginger, that's he's just a redheaded guy to me. They just label it that. So, but I remember he wasn't going, bro. He wasn't. He wasn't going. But of course, they did it anyways. No matter what, like I said, it was going to happen. And nobody knew for a long time, and I ain't no snitch, so I wasn't gonna say nothing. I mean, even though it affected me, it was like if I said something, there's always the possibility. I mean, first off, I ain't gonna say nothing anyways. It's just it. It's built in. It's kind of like I'm ready to go. Okay, so anytime I'm ready to go. And it don't matter the circumstances, nothing. Ifs, ands. I'm a goer. I'm ready to go. Now, I ain't saying I'm badass. I'm saying that goers are ready to go. And when people say snitches get stitches, I don't. I'll tell you right now that don't always apply because I know plenty of snitches that ain't got hemmed up or in trouble and they still living life snitching all day. Okay. I know snitches that snitch and then living life luxury right now while they're snitched on persons in jail just sitting there rotting. So snitching paid off a lot for these feds and people like that and these CIA operatives and stuff. But anyways, I'm just saying I was taught different. I believe the code, and the code to me is that your word. I mean, it's just like Manson said. Your word means everything. If you ain't a man of your word, and you don't live by your word, then you'll die by, the sword, or you know what I'm saying? Like your word, that it's your word is your bond. Your word, it's saying, yeah, I'll have this then, and then you have it then, and then if you don't have it then you come and you explain why you don't, and then it's up to me or the person whether they give you the time to, but at least the person, your word is your bond, and if you ain't willing to fight, then people just take everything from you. Period. Even if you ain't got nothing to take, you think there's something to take. Promise you that. We went to Mulligan's to that pool after they burned us, and it had little scabs on it or whatever. I'll never forget the smell though. That sounds so awful, but when they put that metal to my skin and I could smell my skin burning, it I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like some kind of burnt weird ass smell. It's indescribable, I guess. But we did go to the pool, and when we went to the pool, all three of us that were younger jumped in the pool, and then of course, Mary notices that we've all got crosses burnt into our, shoulders, and she's thinking, well, what's going on with y'all guys? What's this on your shoulders? Why are y'all's shoulders got crosses in them and burnt and stuff? And of course, Ramsey, tells her what the business is, tells her what happens. And she dealt with it. I mean, she came back to the group home, and her and Chuck went downstairs, and I mean, a whole big thing. They called the police on these boys and had them come back, and then the boys got, moved out of the group home. And I mean, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know what happened, but I would assume they got charged, being 17 right near 18 for abusing minors. I mean, and I'm not saying it's not right. I mean, that's fine, but I'm saying that it had already been done. It was over with. The one individual that wanted to do these things, that forced Ramsey to have it, that, all right, I get that. But for me and for Jerry, we made it almost seem like it was cool and it was something we wanted. So the boys didn't force us to do anything, but for him, He was forced, and he'll have that forever. I have it forever right here. I would show you, but right now I've got a tattoo here. I don't want people to see, so But there's a tattoo that covers it anyways. But it's a reminder that maybe if I wouldn't have learned them lessons of not snitching or not saying nothing, it would have made me more responsible to have stood up and said, hey, these 18-year-old boys, 17-year-old boys that are about to be men are, forcing a person and burning them with hot metal. I mean, what kind of rational person looks at that and says don't snitch on that person? I mean, I know why I feel that way. And you'll understand why I feel that way in the future, because more of these stories keep coming up and coming up and coming up, and that's how I live. Then the cage is all I know. The government's put me in there, and I couldn't stay. I mean, other than this time, I did stay this time. I did complete Elizabethton Christian Shelter. I want to tell you one more story for tonight, and then I'm trying to finish Elizabethton Christian Shelter so I can get y'all on to truancy and why truancy and fighting in school led me to constantly go back. Constantly. There's not a school I hadn't been to in Tennessee. Not really. I mean, there's not many schools in the county I'm from that I had been to. Like, I had been to all the high schools that were around in the area. All of the elementaries, junior highs, I had I got crazy stories, even stories about me and stuffed animals and, being, 6 years old in kindergarten in the closet showing little girl stuff, so I got plenty of, which things like that sound crazy, but when you find out that it's me trying to show, a little friend of mine what my dog does to stuffed animals that we sit at the house and laugh about, so it's not bad things like that. But see, if you didn't say that, then people would take that into account and be like, he said this, he said that, he said this. I don't care anyways. So, I'll tell you one more story, like I said, about Elizabethton Christian Shelter. And that is, me and Jerry Ramsey ended up getting a bottle of vodka once. And we had a ton of gummy bears and gummy worms and things like that. And I remember we stashed that bottle of vodka full of those things. And, you got to remember we're 12 and 13. I think I was like 12 and a half, and Ramsey's like, 12 and a half, and Jerry's like right at 13 or something. And we had sat there and pretended we were going to play a drinking game and had played like 2 or 3 hands of blackjack. And by the time 2 or 3 hands were over, we were, gone to the wind. I remember it made me so sick that I never liked drinking after that. I never liked, hard liquor or stuff like that. I mean, of course, I've had a drink from time to time or things, but just never been a drinker. Maybe everything else, but not a drinker. Yeah, I guess for the Elizabethton Christian Shelter story, that's going to be about it. All right. Now, I do want you to know that I did complete that program. My house parents were great. My caseworker was good. I didn't really know that many people by then. You got to remember, I had went into the system, and we'll count it at 12, okay? Because O&A was at 12. But before I was 12, there's a lot of stories. I'll give you one right now. Okay, or let me finish the Elizabeth Christian Shelter story. It was good. I went home. I wasn't home for long. I stayed there 9 months. I do remember going back home, but like I said, I was only home for probably about 6 months. I might have been there 5. And then the next place that we're going to be talking about, I'll give you the details of that one. We'll just go to the next group home after Elizabethton Christian Shelter when I get sent back off. And I would like to go back and let you know a little bit about the Bush story. It's the first time I remember ever getting in a fight, other than my brother and sister. And I was in a place called Jackson Heights. And there were these bushes that, if you're in an apartment complex, especially a poverty apartment complex with a single parent mom, about to drop that off the table. Single parent mom and 3 kids, then, it's kind of hard. But I do remember me and my brother and sister making baseball diamonds out of flour and playing with kids around the apartment complex, which was nice. And we used to run and do a lot of stuff like that. But anyways, on that little bush, there used to be these little cocoon-like things every spring or whatever. And if you were to, say, open them, there were little caterpillars in there. And I guess they were cocoons so they could turn out to be butterflies, obviously. But, the only reason I knew they were in there was this little teeny boy, man, I don't know why I oughta, and he was taking those little things and he was picking them off the tree and putting them down on the ground, and then he'd stomp them. And he'd pick them off that tree and he'd put them down, or that little bush, and he'd put them down on the ground and he'd stomp them. And I told that boy, I said, you pick another one of them off that tree and you put it down on there and you stomp it, I'm going to beat you up. And he picked it off that bush and I beat him up. And, I just remember that's the first fight I ever got into. It didn't last long. It was maybe 10 seconds of me trying to hit him and him kind of trying to hit me. I probably didn't even win. He probably didn't win. I think we just tussled around a little bit. We hit each other a couple of times and it was done. And then, he never picked none of them off the tree in front of me and squished them anymore. And I lived by that my whole life. Even if I see family members do anything to animals like that, it's something I don't accept and won't accept. It's just what it is. But that was probably the first fight. Of course, there's long lists of those too. And then I'll give you the last thing would be the first accident. Now, this is the first accident that I don't know for sure. It's a story that was told to me by my mom and my mom's sister and things. And I guess when I was maybe a year or 2 years old or a year and a half, somewhere in there, I had climbed up a bookshelf and the bookshelf had tumbled back on me, and of course they come running in the room, lift the bookshelf, and I'm under there laughing and giggling and I'm fine. Okay? That's the first accident that I have a non-memory of, but I have a memory of somebody telling me their memories. So factually, I don't know exactly how it happened or what happened, but by their understanding and their being first-hand witnesses to the event, should be pretty valid to say that they know what they're talking about. And of course, that's the first accident. Now, we will go into accidents because obviously I just told you I got hit in the head with a baseball bat. And I had a pogo stick go through my throat. So there's plenty of those. Tune back in, and like I said, I'm going to have a few upgrades this week, which will make this thing a lot easier for me. I'll also be live streaming, playing a few games. I'm not really good at them, but I would like to try to see if I can keep y'all entertained long enough. Maybe you'll watch. Who knows? Anyways, so I will get back on here as soon as I can. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.